Good afternoon, everybody. Caleb here with Indiana Storm Chasing Network here. We're going to take a look at the near-term forecast and then what we have going forward here over the next couple of weeks into March. So right now today, let's take a look at live satellite here across the region. As you can see, we have an abundance of sunshine here across the continental United States. A few clouds over here on Texas and southern Oklahoma, as well as northeast Indiana, southwest Ohio, and a little bit of southeast Indiana. This is thanks to our shortwave that moved in yesterday. Some of those pesky clouds are still hanging around, but we expect those to mix out here as we go throughout the rest of the afternoon. Some lake influence on those clouds as well, so keeping those clouds around. Reason for the sunshine that we have here today? Well, you can thank this huge ridge of high pressure here that is currently sitting across the Missouri-Kansas border there. A really strong area of high pressure, and that is keeping us quiet, dry, but also breezy across the area today. A lot of the reason for that all has to do with temperature profiles in the atmosphere. I know a lot of times, this time of year especially, we can't have a sunny day without a little bit of wind. And the reason for that has to do with temperature profiles. So here's a quick diagram that we made here explaining why a lot of times this time of year, especially early spring and late fall, is when we really have this setup become favorable almost every day when you get a pattern like this move in. And this all has to do with pressure changes and temperature profiles in the atmosphere. As you can see here, this is a setup of what we have here today. We have warmer air at the surface being heated from the sun, but we also have not too far up in the atmosphere, really just 1,000 feet off the ground, if not lower than that, we have cold, dense air aloft. And what happens with this is all called adiabatic heating and cooling. I know that's a fancy weather term out there for you, and that term is also used if you're in HVAC industry. That term is used for HVAC furnaces as well. A lot of times you have adiabatic heating and cooling systems. It's no different in the world of weather, just in a much larger scale. So really what we have here going on, you have the sun outside, bright sunny day. That solar energy from the sun is heating the ground. As it does so, those air parcels begin to rise. As they begin to rise, they begin to cool down and become very dense. It expands and cools due to decreasing air pressure. This is called adiabatic cooling. Same process in your HVAC system at home. As that air expands and cools, it begins to sink. It becomes to get colder and heavier, and as it sinks, the air compresses due to warming, and you get increasing pressure at the surface. And the difference in pressure really creates the moving of the air. That creates our wind that we have here. This is why in the afternoon, the wind picks up, and then in the evening when the sun goes down, there's less mixing, less moving around. The air becomes quiet and still. So a lot of times when you leave for work in the morning, it's a calm, beautiful day. The birds are chirping. But then when you go on your lunch break, the wind is blowing and the birds are hunkered down. And then in the evening, everything calms down. This is really the pattern that we have here today across the much of the continental United States here. But that is about the change here over the next 72 hours and into next week. We starting to see a pattern change coming around where we're going to go from a quiet period to then back to active again. We have more storm systems on the horizon over the next 2 weeks, and that will continue here really over the next couple of weeks and into March as well. So here's the pattern that we have here right now. Big ridge of high pressure here. But watch as we go into next week here. Watch the jet stream here. You can see some ridging here over the west, and then look over towards the Great Lakes region. We have some troughing starting to move into the region. This will bring those weather systems back in. And then here we are in the second week of March here. Look at the big troughing that we have here coming into the region here. Big ridge of high pressure here over the western continental United States, and some troughing here over the eastern United States. This will bring weather systems back into the region here. And here's kind of the layout of the pattern that we're going to be moving into towards the last week of February and the first couple weeks of March. We have some slight ridging here over the western United States. That'll keep things quiet over there across the Rocky Mountains, California. Some snow is expected to come in across the northern mountains of the Cascades. That is thanks to the jet stream here. You can see the jet stream in red here as it moves up to the north into Canada across the Pacific Northwest. And then it starts to dive back down across the Great Lakes region and into New England. With thanks to some ridging that we have here. This pattern also supports an active storm pattern that'll bring in low pressure systems riding the jet stream down into our region here. Areas shaded in blue are the best areas for winter precipitation, snow, perhaps some wintry mix as well. This pattern is very supportive of what we call split pattern systems, where we have a cold sector where snow is favored, but we also have a warm sector where rain and perhaps even a few thunderstorms are favored as well. A very similar pattern to what we had here earlier in the month of February, where we had parts of northern Indiana getting in on some winter reaction while southern Indiana stayed mild and wet. That's really the pattern that we're going to be moving back into towards the end of the month here and towards the beginning of April. Here's kind of what to expect here on these are just model examples. These are not forecasts, and these are not systems that we are expecting, but are examples of what we could see here over the next couple of weeks here of what a split flow system really is, where we have a warm sector to the south of the low pressure system where you have that green and rain. And then as we move on the north side, we get into some wintry mix and then ultimately snow on the very north end of that, where the air profiles are 100% cold and you don't have a little bit of warm or all warm. Everything is cold up there. So moving into the next couple of weeks here, we have that pattern moving into our region where we're going to have areas of likely going to see all snow, especially north central Michigan and the UP of Michigan as well. They have the best chances for seeing all snow. As we move back south into Indiana in our region, we really start seeing a more favorable environment for rain and perhaps maybe some wintry mix in northern Indiana. Again, these details won't be fully known until we have a system 1 to 3 days out, and we have that data available to really hone in on components such as precipitation amounts, temperature profiles, and so on and so forth. That data just is not yet known yet, and the reason for that is, it all comes down to our forecasting process. This is why we don't release snow totals super early, just because, as things can change, and if you issue stuff too soon, you're issuing stuff before the data becomes available and before you can analyze it to really get the numbers in the amounts that the system is fully capable of. So in the 7 to 10 day period, it's called the it's possible period. We're looking at a pattern. Okay, we see a pattern that's favorable for winter weather. We have a nice trough in the jet stream. We got a system moving in. There's some cold air that could be there. We just don't know how much, and we don't know how strong the storm system will be. Those are details that we look at in the 7 to 10 day period. We kind of highlight our calendars for a time period to watch, but we don't really have a system yet. As we move into the 4 to 6 days out, okay, we have a couple systems now that look favorable. Okay, we're identifying hazards such as who's going to see snow, who's going to see rain, and who's going to see mix. We're looking at those areas. We kind of shade them, but we don't yet have enough confidence for how much snow we're going to see, how much rain we're going to see. Those details aren't yet known yet. As we move into the 1 to 3 days out, that's when we're finalizing details. All right, we have the data available. Okay, we know we're going to have, this much moisture available. Our low pressure is going to be this strong. It's going to be in this location. All right, now what are we looking at in terms of precipitation amounts, snow totals, rain totals? All that data is then processed in the 1 to 3 days out. That's when we start issuing precipitation totals and snow totals out for the public. That's when we are confident enough in the data that we have available to go ahead and put those numbers out there, just because we have the data available. And our guidance models have the confidence as well that, hey, this system is capable of producing an X amount of snow or an X amount of rain. So that's what we kind of have going forward here over the next couple of weeks. But we also have an area highlighted in yellow and red that is also favored for some thunderstorm chances or perhaps some severe weather chances going into the first week of March as well. As we start moving into March, we're going to be talking more about severe weather awareness and preparedness, just because meteorological spring starts on March 1st. And the reason it starts on March 1st and not on March 20th is because we start seeing atmospheric patterns that really start changing or evolving right around March 1st. We start seeing the patterns kind of shift a little bit, where you have more warm air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. You have cold air that's pulsating, it retreats, and then it comes back south. You have the changes of the air masses, and that really promotes a favorable environment for thunderstorms. And we starting to see increases in severe weather across the country as a whole. And we'll start talking about that as we get into March. And again, here's the historical tornado risk for March. If you remember in February, part of that some risk was entering parts of Indiana. Tornadoes in Indiana in February are rather rare. They're not uncommon. They're not unheard of. Last year, we had several tornadoes in February last year in Indiana. This year, it's not looking like we're going to have any this year for the month. Again, we still have the end of the month to go through, but again, severe weather is not really looking probable for the last week of February at this time. But as we move into March, this is when we start seeing favorable patterns for severe weather moving into the Ohio Valley region especially, you can see a greater risk starting to move into portions of Indiana and Illinois. And if you think back, tornadoes, although our highest probability month for tornadoes, our more active month for tornadoes is in fact June, when we historically see the most tornadoes in Indiana. We can get tornadoes in March. Think back to March 31st, 2023. We had a significant tornado outbreak across Indiana. In fact, it was the most significant tornado outbreak since August 24th, 2015. And then look to last year, March 14th, 2024. We had a significant EF3 tornado impact Winchester, Indiana, during that tornado outbreak that caused even a couple fatal tornadoes as well, including the Lakeview high-end EF3 tornado that killed 3 people, unfortunately, in the Winchester EF3 tornado that was almost rated an EF4. We almost had an EF4 last year in March if it wasn't for some fine structural details that the damage survey team found at the Taco Bell that presented, okay, it wasn't reinforced to the point where it met EF4 criteria, but we were close. Tornadoes can happen in March in Indiana, and they're not uncommon. So that is something that we'll talk about here, especially if we move into March. We'll start getting into that Severe Weather Preparedness Week. And again, Severe Weather Preparedness Week in Indiana is March 9th through the 15th this year. Excuse me. An Indiana statewide tornado drill is at 10:15 a.m. on Tuesday, March 11th of this year. We encourage every business, school, household should participate and practice their severe weather action plan, meaning they know where to go in the event of severe weather. They have a safe place picked out, and all their team members or family members know when to go and how to get there. That is the most important thing, and the reason why we practice these is oftentimes tornadoes come with little or no warning, so the key is being efficient and swift in getting your severe weather action plan together and into your safe place. That way, in the event of severe weather, you guys know where to go and you're already there when the tornado strikes or severe weather strikes. During this time on Tuesday, March 11th, the National Weather Service will issue a statewide tornado warning for Indiana. And again, this will be a test alert. No tornado would be on the ground at this time. This would just be a testing the emergency alert system, making sure that the alerts go off how they're supposed to. And you'll probably see that alert pop up on your phone as well as the emergency alert system is activated. So as we move beyond severe weather, another thing in March is that we're getting closer to the summer solstice. Our Earth is still tilting back towards the sun, and we start gaining almost 3 minutes of sunlight a day into March here. You can see southern Indiana and central Indiana gaining nearly 70 minutes of daylight here throughout the month of March. Portions of northern Indiana gaining 80 minutes a day sunlight throughout the month of March. So that's nearly 3 minutes of daylight a day. And 7 o'clock sunsets are coming back. Yes, I know everyone's excited about that. And a lot of that has to do with daylight saving times, which is coming on March 9th of this year. So that is something to keep in mind as well. I know a lot of us aren't excited about losing a daylight or losing an hour of sleep. However, we do get daylight after work, which is very nice for a lot of us. I know we get to spend more time outdoors. So that is something we are all looking forward to going into the month of March. So with that being said here, guys, quiet pattern right now, but we do have a very active pattern on the way, bringing more potential for storm systems and storm tracks into the region here. Again, above average precipitation is favored for the Great Lakes region here as we move into the last week of February and into March. Again, this is great news for the agricultural industry as a whole. I know last year in the fall, we were in a severe drought across much of Indiana. Right now, no drought is in progress in Indiana. We are, however, abnormally dry in a few places, but drought doesn't typically start until you're at D1 or severe drought criteria. That isn't the case for most of Michigan. A lot of Michigan is still in a state of severe drought, as they have not had the amount of rain that we have had here in Indiana. However, above average precipitation is favored there in that hatched oval there across the entirety of the Great Lakes region. That'll really be good news if we can, in fact, get that precipitation here before we start getting in the planting season here for plant 2025. So good news there. Hopefully minimize our hydrologic impacts here across the region as a whole as we get into the planting season here for our agricultural community and our growers. So with that being said here, guys, I hope you guys all have a great afternoon and a great weekend here coming up here. Again, enjoy the sunshine here near term. We're going to have a lot of sunshine here. We hope you guys enjoy that sunshine, although we will have some windy afternoons. Remember that those air parcels are bouncing around. They're mixing in the atmosphere to give us that wind. But we hope you enjoy the sunshine here as a rainy, more active pattern starts to move in by next week. So with that being said, take care, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.